and it's looking to see, do you have any obstruction? And if you do, it increases your EPAP. So it automatically figures out, you're laying there and your tongue's you can't get the air in. It will see that in that test, and it'll move the EPAP up until you're no longer occluded. So we'll build a bracket around it. So we have our volume on the top with a bracket, right? Now we got another bracket on the bottom, and that bottom bracket will generally use 4 and 10, and I'll let the machine automatically move PEEP or EPAP up and down based on what it sees for obstruction. And so it's always holding them open efficiently so the volume piece can be met. RT in a box. So that way when they go home, we might use 4 and 12. 12 be a maximum for, let's say, a COPD patient. Because if it gets to 12 and stays there, maybe they have overlap. They got underlying sleep problems that the doctor doesn't know about. But they're being very aggressive on the COPD side. They never thought about sleep being a problem. Most COPD patients aren't obstructive in the upper airway. So why is it doing that? Drives more information back to the physician to look at the care plan for the patient. You guys talk much about COPD readmission? A bit? It's a real hot topic these days. This is what probably 95% of patients get nationwide in the United States. It's AVAPS, AE, and whatever kind of interface we can get them on. Because it'll automatically take them through good days and bad days. On good days, their pressures are nice and low, but on bad days, we can get really aggressive. It is got the power of an invasive vent. It can do 50 centimeters of water pressure. It's cleared all the way down to 5 kilograms, so I can take little babies. Right now, Dr. Wu has got 2 patients in Hawaii on Trilogy on RAM cannulas because that's what it took to get the little pups out of the hospital. So you're the mom, you're tired of your kid being in the hospital for 5 months. They were preemie, you got them grown up to the point, but the only interfacing you can get them on is a RAM. Put them on this. It's a little off-label, but it works fantastic because it's designed to deal with leak and it can deal with pressures up to 50. Trilogy, believe it or not, can actually meet all of its performance specifications all the way out to 21 feet. That's a long ways away. That means these home care companies can be extremely versatile in setting up some of these patients. I've got pediatric patients at home that are on 3 lengths of tubing.
Yeah.
So now they can roam the whole room.
We have a little girl that's like learning to crawl. She just crawls around.
Yeah, you put her on 16 feet of tubing with a whisper swivel on there, and it could be hooked to her trach, or if she was on a little mask, no problem.
Yeah.
Where traditionally with us, with our equipment,
yeah, 21 feet.
Yeah, that's good.
6 feet. Yeah, who wants to be on a 6-foot leash? My wife tries to keep me on a shorter one, but it won't work. So, there you go. On the circuit with this guy, any bacteria filter that you're using for your ventilator will work great on this. You always want to use a bacterial filter on any device that blows air to patient, period. Okay? Other than that, that is the meat and potatoes of everything to do with Trilogy. This thing has flow capability of well over 230 liters a minute. It can do respiratory rates as high as 80. It'll do pressures as high as 50. It is life support through and through. It's flight rated. I can take it on aircraft. I can fly to Japan on it. I got on a flight in LA with a lady that was using this with a standard circuit, wearing her little MaraView mask, the one that does the nose and the mouth, and she came walking on the plane wearing her Trilogy. And I sat there and went, yeah! Wanted to sit next to them. So, want me to tell you more about your ventilator? Of course, the home care company would kill me. So, get out, you hit finish, you hit exit. It's very, very simple. Menu, settings and alarms. If I want to change a mode, there's a timed, old school timed breath BiPAP. ST is how we do CPAP pressure support on this device. S, no one uses S. CPAP, yes.
What does ST stand for?
Spontaneous timed.
Oh, okay.
So
And then S is just spontaneous.
I'm as old as a dinosaur. Way back when non-invasive ventilation got invented, we only had CPAP. Then they came up with the idea, well, let's add pressure support to it. That became BiPAP, okay, is what we called it, BiPAP or bi-level, okay, because we were bi-leveling the pressures. Then they figured out, well, what happens to somebody when they're on this machine and we knock them out. Let's say we give them too much oxygen and we knock them out and their respiratory rate falls So they came up with ST, spontaneous timed, where they gave them a backup rate. Now this is where a lot of physicians get confused. Backup rate is truly that. When I set it to 10 and you're breathing at a rate of 12, are you getting any backup breaths? No. But on SIMV or on a mechanical ventilator, doctors will think backup rate is the same as respiratory rate, and I've watched them a million times walk up to their ST device, Vision, V60, and turn the backup rate up because they want the patient to get more volume or minute ventilation. Patient's breathing at a rate of 28, and they just moved them from 12 to 16. Did they do anything? Didn't do a darn thing. Happens all the time. I kid you not how many times I've seen in the ER, I just go, oh God. Doc, you didn't do a darn thing. They don't know that it's truly a backup rate. They think it's SIMV, and they've turned up the patient's respiratory rate. So, same thing with this thing. It's got a lot of those old modes in it because this thing was designed and built 10 years ago. We're in a whole different world today, 10 years down the road than we were then. Timed, that's a timed only breath. ST would be that spontaneous timed, which means IPAP, EPAP with a backup rate. Plus you can do some AVAPs in it if you needed. Spontaneous only, I've never seen it used. CPAP you can use, but there's no pressure support in the CPAP. The only way to get pressure support in here is use ST with this device. SIMV means that it's assist control SIMV. Then it works just like your regular assist control SIMV, okay? You'd have your volume, your rate. We don't use flow, we use inspiratory time. How do you figure out nighttime? Adults get 1 second, pediatrics get 0.5, babies get 0.25. Pretty simple. So adjust it from there based on what you're seeing for chest rise. AC volume, control ventilation. No one uses that anymore. That's 7,200 days right there. Pressure control SIMV. We see this a lot in pediatrics still. And then the AVAPS AE, which is a non-invasive only mode. We do not take AVAPS AE and put it on a trach. It's a mask only mode. It's also technically an adult only mode. I've seen some physicians use it on children with great success, but they're off label. We cleared it when we did it with FDA because it never existed before. We did it for adults. We've never done the submittal for FDA for pediatric. So it's already hard enough to get stuff through those guys. Okay, and then you can just scroll back and forth, as you can see, to get to anything else that you want to talk about. Next thing I'm going to talk about is AutoTrack because it's on all of our devices. I'm going to take a second and we're going to go through this. Give me 2 seconds. I'll use a pressure of 16, a PEEP of 5. I'm going to turn my breath rate down to 1. I'm going to move my inspiratory time down to 0.4. I'm going to use AutoTrack. My rise time's at 3. And that's it. That's all my settings. I'm now in pressure control. PEEP of 5, pressure 16. What I just showed you guys in the department with the baby lung. Now you guys don't do a bunch of babies, but you're all RTs, you get it. I'm going to take this. And here was the thing with AutoTrack going back. The reason you want to use AutoTrack on your V60 is because it automatically sets the trigger point and the cycle point for the patient. It follows the first 3 to 5 breaths and figures out where they trigger the breath delivery, where their chest wants to fall into exhalation, and where that trigger is again. Trigger cycle, trigger cycle, trigger cycle. The circle is the leak. That's why when their leak changes or gets really big, the machine doesn't sit there and auto cycle. It just goes, that ain't the patient, that's leak. It still knows you trigger here and you cycle here. I'm in AutoTrack and I'm on this baby test lung and I'm going to try to get it to trigger. Okay, this is a little lung, right? Not really triggering, is it? Standard 6-foot circuit, little ET tube. I think it's a 2 or 2.5. I'm going to go menu, settings and alarms, and the only thing I'm going to change is my trigger type. Remember we talked about flow trigger and you guys love 3, all right, like everyone else. AutoTrack sensitive is about 60% more sensitive than AutoTrack, and AutoTrack works great on adults, but it was designed for stage 4 COPD and babies. There's my little circle that tells me if I'm triggering. pardon my French, holy crap. Is that any work of breathing to trigger? No. I can add 2 more circuit links to this, and I can trigger tidal volumes between 3 and 10 cc's with a leak all the way out to 21 feet. There's not another ventilator made that can do that, because they all have limitations on how far that their algorithms work. I mean, you can just touch that and see it. That don't take much, does it? So if you're a little kid and you're moving a high respiratory rate and that machine's supposed to see you and you've got all this noise right here, a problem with a lot of the big leaks is that little tiny breath gets lost in all the big leaks. This FEP improves this quite a bit on V60, but that's auto-track sensitive. It might be on your V60. Who's it for? That's COPD patient who can't trigger. They've got intrinsic PEEP. They're literally going, you know, that's their breath rate. They're sitting there breathing at 35 breaths a minute. You stick them on it initially. They can't hit the trigger on auto-track, but they can hit it on auto-track sensitive. So that's in here too. So that's something to look for on your V60. You'll eventually be getting V30s, which are a little smaller device. They're a little less horsepower than this guy, but it will have AVAPS AE on it. So you'll be able to take AVAPS AE and do AVAPS AE on the floors of those COPD patients going home, which means Madison here with Aloha can get prescriptions for Trilogies for those people on the way out the door that have COPD. So that's about it.